Rain lashed against the windows, each drop a tiny hammer against the glass, creating a symphony of chaos. The storm outside was relentless, mirroring the turmoil within my mind. The city was drowning in darkness, both literal and metaphorical, as the night seemed to stretch on endlessly. The flickering streetlight cast long shadows, dancing eerily on the wet pavement. It was as if the light itself was afraid, trembling in the face of the horrors that lurked in the shadows. The streets were deserted, save for the occasional figure hurrying home, unaware of the grim discovery that awaited just around the corner. I stepped out of the car, greeted by the pungent scent of blood mingling with the damp city air. The rain did little to wash away the metallic tang that clung to the atmosphere. The city, usually so vibrant and alive, felt like a ghost town haunted by the specter of violence. A shiver ran down my spine, not from the cold, but from the sheer weight of the scene before me. The air was thick with tension, each breath a struggle as I tried to steady myself. This was not my first crime scene, but something about this one felt different, more sinister. This was bad, even by London standards. The city had seen its fair share of darkness, but this was something else entirely. The alleyway, usually a place of refuge for the city's downtrodden, had become a stage for a macabre performance. The victim lay sprawled on the cobblestones, a grotesque tableau framed by the imposing Gothic architecture of the alleyway. The rain had soaked through his clothes, making him appear even more lifeless, if that were possible. The scene was almost artistic in its brutality, a twisted masterpiece of death. He was young, barely a man. His life had been cut short before it had even truly begun. The innocence of youth was starkly contrasted by the violence of his end. It was a tragic reminder of the fragility of life and the cruelty that could snatch it away in an instant. His eyes stared vacantly at the unforgiving sky, as if seeking answers that would never come. The rain fell into his open eyes, but he did not blink. He would never blink again. The emptiness in his gaze was haunting, a silent scream that echoed in the night. A single playing card, the Queen of Hearts, rested upon his chest. It was a calling card, a signature left by the killer. This was not a random act of violence. It was a message, a taunt. The card was pristine, untouched by the rain, as if it had been placed there with great care. "Another one for you, Inspector," Sergeant Davies said, his voice barely a murmur in the howling wind. He looked pale, shaken. I couldn't blame him. The weight of the situation was heavy on all of us. The rain seemed to amplify the sense of dread, each drop a reminder of the darkness we were up against. "Have the forensics team begun their work?" I asked, my voice betraying no emotion. It was a necessary detachment, a shield against the horrors we faced. The team was already at work, their movements precise and methodical, a stark contrast to the chaos of the scene. Davies nodded, handing me a pair of gloves. The latex felt cold and clinical against my skin, a barrier between me and the grim reality before us. It was a small comfort, but a necessary one. We had a job to do, and we couldn't afford to let our emotions get in the way. "Yes, sir. They're just setting up." The forensics team moved with practiced efficiency, their tools and equipment laid out with precision. Each piece had a purpose, each action a step towards uncovering the truth. It was a meticulous process, but one that was crucial to solving the puzzle before us. I pulled the gloves on, my mind already racing. Another murder, another message. The pattern was becoming clear, but the motive remained elusive. This was more than just a killing spree. It was a game, and the stakes were higher than ever. The killer was toying with us, challenging us to catch him. This was no ordinary killer. He was methodical, precise, and disturbingly creative. Each murder was a piece of a larger puzzle, a twisted game of cat and mouse. The city was his playground, and we were his unwitting participants. But I was determined to turn the tables. This was a game, and I intended to win. The killer had made his move, and now it was my turn. The rain continued to fall, but it no longer felt like a burden. It was a challenge, a test of my resolve. I would find him, and I would stop him. The game was on. They call me a maverick, an eccentric. Perhaps they're right. In a world where conformity is the norm, I stand out like a sore thumb. My methods are unorthodox, my approach unconventional. But that's what makes me effective. I don't just see the world, I dissect it piece by piece until the truth reveals itself. I see the world differently. While others see chaos, I see patterns. Where they see randomness, I see a story waiting to be told. Every shadow, every whisper, every fleeting glance holds a clue. It's like a complex puzzle, and I have the unique ability to see how the pieces fit together. Patterns, clues, whispers of the truth hidden in plain sight. It's a dance, a delicate balance between intuition and logic. The evidence speaks, but only if you know how to listen. And I've trained myself to hear even the faintest of whispers. It's both a gift and a curse. A gift because it allows me to solve the unsolvable, to bring justice where there was none. But it's also a curse because it means I can never truly switch off. The world is always speaking to me, always showing me its secrets, whether I want to see them or not. A gift because it allows me to solve the unsolvable. Each case is a new challenge, a new story to uncover. And with each solved mystery, I feel a sense of accomplishment, a validation of my unique abilities. A curse because it means I can never truly switch off. Even in the quiet moments, my mind is racing, analyzing, searching for connections. Sleep is a luxury I can rarely afford. The city never sleeps, and neither do I. The victim's face was pale, almost peaceful, a stark contrast to the violence that had ended his life. In death, he looked serene, as if he had finally found the peace that eluded him in life. But the scene told a different story, one of struggle and pain. His clothes were expensive, tailored. This wasn't a random attack. The precision of the cuts, the choice of the victim, everything pointed to a deeper motive. Someone wanted him dead, and they wanted to send a message. This wasn't a random attack. This was personal. The killer knew the victim, perhaps even intimately. There was a story here, a history that needed to be uncovered, and it was my job to piece it together. Anything from forensics, Davies? I asked, my eyes scanning the scene. Every detail mattered, every piece of evidence was a potential clue. The forensics team was thorough, but sometimes it was the smallest detail that broke the case wide open. Multiple stab wounds to the chest, sir. The brutality of the attack was evident. This was a crime of passion, of anger. But why? What had driven the killer to such lengths? Time of death estimated around 2 hours ago. The timeline was tight. The killer was still out there, possibly nearby. The urgency of the situation weighed heavily on my mind. No wallet or ID on the body. The lack of identification was a deliberate move. The killer wanted to buy time, to delay our investigation. But they had left something behind, something they hadn't intended. No ID, but a playing card, I mused, picking up the Queen of Hearts with a gloved hand. Theatrical. The card was a message, a signature. Our killer was playing a game, and they wanted us to know it. Our killer likes an audience. They thrive on the attention, the thrill of the chase. This wasn't just about the victim. It was about the spectacle, the drama, and we were all players in their twisted game. Any thoughts, sir? Davies asked. His eyes were filled with questions, with uncertainty. He was looking to me for answers, for direction. Thoughts are dangerous, Davies, I replied, a hint of a smile playing on my lips. In this line of work, overthinking could be a downfall. But leads we can work with. And we had a lead, a tantalizing thread that could unravel the entire mystery. But leads we can work with. And with that, we set off, ready to follow the trail, to uncover the truth hidden in the shadows of the city. Back at my cluttered desk, the image of the Queen of Hearts seared into my mind. I began to piece together the puzzle. 3 murders in as many weeks, all young men, all found with playing cards. The Jack of Spades, the King of Clubs, and now the Queen of Hearts. My mind raced, connecting the dots. The cards were a message, a twisted game. But what did it mean? Who was the intended recipient? Me? Was this a challenge? I pulled out my notebook, the pages filled with scribbled notes, diagrams, and theories. The killer was meticulous, leaving no trace. But every killer makes mistakes. It was only a matter of time before they slipped up. Davies, I called out, my voice echoing in the near-empty station. Yes, sir, I need you to pull up all the files on unsolved murders involving playing cards. Go back 10 years. And Davies, yes, sir? Don't even think about asking me if I'm all right. Hours melted away, each tick of the clock echoing in the silence of my dimly lit office. The night seemed endless, a vast expanse of time stretching out before me, filled with the weight of unsolved mysteries and unanswered questions. The city outside my window slumbered, oblivious to the darkness that had descended upon my small corner of the world. Streetlights cast long shadows on the empty streets, and the occasional car passed by, its headlights cutting through the gloom. But I was wide awake, fueled by black coffee and the burning need to understand the mind of a killer. My eyes, though heavy with fatigue, were sharp, scanning through the endless pages of reports and photographs that cluttered my desk. Davies had returned with a mountain of files, each one a potential key to unlocking the mystery that had consumed my thoughts. The sheer volume was overwhelming, but I knew that somewhere within those pages lay the answers I sought. Most were irrelevant, filled with mundane details and dead ends. But one caught my eye, its contents hinting at a deeper connection that had eluded us until now. A case from 5 years ago, long forgotten by most, but now resurfacing with a chilling relevance. The details were eerily familiar, mirroring the current string of murders that had gripped the city in fear. A series of murders with striking similarities. The victims, the method, even the calling card left at each scene. A playing card, meticulously placed beside each lifeless body. Playing cards, young victims, the same modus operandi. It was as if the killer was taunting us, daring us to connect the dots and uncover the truth. Davies, run a facial recognition scan on the victims. Compare them to our current victims. I needed to know if there was a link, a thread that tied these tragedies together. Compare them to our current victims. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the computer, its screen flickering as it processed the data. See if there's any connection. Right away, sir. Davies' fingers flew over the keyboard, his focus unwavering. We were on the brink of a breakthrough, and every second counted. The computer whirred to life, its screen illuminating the room with an eerie glow. The anticipation was palpable, each moment stretching into an eternity as we waited for the results. Minutes later, the results flashed on the screen. A match. The victims from 5 years ago were all related to the current victims. Brothers, cousins, friends. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. The victims from 5 years ago were all related to the current victims. Brothers, cousins, friends. It was a web of connections, each thread leading back to a shared past. It's revenge, I whispered, the pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place. Someone was targeting these young men, seeking retribution for a past grievance. Someone is targeting these young men, seeking retribution for a past grievance. But who, sir? Davies asked, his voice betraying his confusion. The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Davies asked, his voice betraying his confusion. That, Davies, is the million-dollar question, I replied, a grim smile spreading across my face. The answer was tantalizingly close, yet just out of reach. That, Davies, is the million-dollar question, I replied, a grim smile spreading across my face. And I have a feeling I know just the person to ask. The pieces were aligning, and the path forward was becoming clear. And I have a feeling I know just the person to ask. The night was far from over, but for the first time in hours, I felt a glimmer of hope. The answers were within reach, and I was determined to uncover the truth.